afternoon. Billie Sankovic, CEO of Western Sydney Community Forum. Welcome to Digital Dialogue Western Sydney Unfiltered. How are you?
Hi, Adam. I'm well. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Before we begin today, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands in which we meet today and pay my respects to traditional elders past, present and emerging. Billie, how are you going?
I'm well. And look, can I take that opportunity to also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the many lands, I suppose, that we're all standing on. I'm standing on Tharawal land down in southwestern Sydney, so I pay my respects to elders on this land, both past, present, and of course future. And
it's a wonderful area down there in Camden.
Yes, it is. It sure is. We've had a bit of rain lately, but it's lovely at the moment.
Let me start by saying congratulations. We were talking off air a little bit about all the work that the Community Forum is doing at the moment, but one thing of note, which I've been checking in on quite a bit, is the Zest Awards, which for the first time in its history has moved to an online format this year. And I've been tuning in and catching it. Great concept, great pivot to get to that, given where you started traditionally, and obviously some great highlights and individuals worthy of special recognition. Firstly, tell us a bit about the Zest Awards. I know it's something that you're quite proud of, been going for a number of years now, and this year in particular, in different circumstances, how you managed to make that move towards online and how it's all gone.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thanks so much for that feedback, Adam. I mean, the Zest Awards are really, I suppose, one of the most high-profile initiatives that the forum rolls out, and essentially, it's an opportunity to really recognise some of the really important work that's going on the ground, grassroots, and that is working directly with community groups in terms of trying to improve health and well-being economically, socially, environmentally, across the whole sort of spectrum. And often it's the grassroots efforts that not only in Western Sydney but nationally and globally sometimes that we tend to miss. And with Western Sydney in particular, there is quite a lot of work that's going on the ground, and the Zest is really an opportunity to bring that to the fore and recognise some of that work and really share some of those rich stories that we have in Western Sydney. And it's been absolutely a challenge to roll that out under COVID. So as you know, it's normally held annually at the Millennium Room at ANZ Stadium. So this year we certainly did pivot, and we've become a bit of a Netflix, if I can,
I look forward to the email every week, seeing the next segment that comes along. And like you're saying, it's the stories that I think is the most uplifting. Being able to hear and see it, because I mean, obviously there's a lot that goes on in Western Sydney which we don't know about, but your event in particular does do a great job in highlighting those stories.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
The other thing, I mean, you mentioned grassroots, which is important, and as you probably realise, I call on one of the few people I do call on regularly to provide a sense of what's happening at that community level, being that your ears and eyes are so low to the ground out that way. What are you seeing, and what have you seen over the past 6 months? How's COVID impacted that? We're seeing probably in places like America, which is obviously trending at the moment, about how the divide in communities and COVID's amplified that division. It hasn't happened here in Australia. It hasn't happened, I don't think, in Western Sydney. What do you put that down to, and what are some of the key things that you've taken away from those that are probably most vulnerable at the moment during COVID?
Yeah, it's been, I have to say, one of the toughest years of my career and my time working in Western Sydney over the last 30 odd years. And you know, at the beginning, we've done as an organisation and as the peak for Western Sydney, we completed an impact analysis early in the piece, sort of end March, early April, and then we redid that so that we could track how things were going around that sort of June period. And one of the things that came out initially, which was for me is really stuck in my mind, is people on the ground saying to me, you know, we're just bumbling along, and we're hoping that we're getting it right, and we're doing the best that we possibly can, and we just don't know. And what I can say is that sort of really resonated or resonates with our experience over the last 6 or 7 months. People are bumbling along, certainly in terms of a sector, as an industry that's working with the people who are experiencing crisis and vulnerability under normal circumstances, and then having to really up the ante in terms of their service delivery in these COVID circumstances. We have been, as an industry, bumbling along. But certainly as an industry, there was a really rapid transition. And the feedback that we've been getting from our members and the community groups and agencies that we work with has been really quite specific. And I guess there are a couple of trends, or a few trends, that I will mention. One is certainly around this digital inclusion. It was just an ongoing conversation, and we've been having that conversation. In fact, Adam, you and I have had it, and this was just emerging, not only just in terms of having access to adequate sort of hardware and software, but also connectivity. And in Western Sydney, there are some pockets where people are experiencing some pretty significant disadvantage socially and economically, and there's a lack of access to service generally. And then moving into this sort of digital environment without the same level of digital access like the rest of Sydney and Australia enjoys, that became a significant barrier, you know, from children and education to employment and connectivity with social networks as well. So that was just kept being an emerging theme, and is continues to be an emerging theme. I think the other thing that came through clearly, and these are sort of public, they've become part of the public dialogue, which is good, is the experiences of isolation and violence in the home, and services absolutely that reported as part of our impact analysis were seeing an increase in access to service. Or call out to service, and disclosures as well. So there was, and we tried to quantify that, and from our cohort that participated in the impact analysis, and these are hundreds and hundreds of agencies that are working with thousands and thousands of people. There was something like around 60% of presentations to services across Western Sydney had some relation to family violence. So that, as I said, these are national public policy themes and priorities. So it's pleasing to see that we're having that conversation not just at the grassroots, but we're having that conversation nationally. Look, I think the other thing that certainly has been emerging through the agencies that we work with is the whole factor, of course, of access to stable and secure employment. And we've got even in pre-COVID times, there were particular, as I said, pockets that of communities that are experiencing disadvantage in terms of access to secure employment, and that is and what's been reported to us as well have been certainly impacted in a different way because of caring responsibilities, on top of also being part of a casualised, I guess, workforce more so as well. So there's been some reports. So these are some of the themes that have come through, and they resonate, of course, with the national conversation.
On the employment front, expectation is that we haven't seen the worst of it in that direction. Traditionally, Western Sydney. And you mentioned some of the pockets there, which have historic sort of higher unemployment rates than others. But traditionally, during recessions, Western Sydney is probably a little bit more exposed and doesn't have a great track record on that front. What's the feeling like at that level, at the community level, where sort of faced with economic uncertainty and the hardship that's about to hit? Is there a level of positivity that we will come out okay, and that the response from government and other players has been where it should be? Are those sort of things being considered or talked about, and what's the general mood at that level?
Look, it's really difficult, I suppose, to generalise because Western Sydney is so diverse and, it's half the population of Sydney and a third of the population of New South Wales. So we know from our work in different local areas that there really is a different experience. So and I'm glad you brought that up, because what we know is that those that are in times where there's economic and social difficulties, what we know is those that are already vulnerable are more affected in these times. So there would be different experiences and views, and certainly from different agencies. So I don't want to highlight any particular area, but depending on the areas that the agency might be located in terms of, grassroots, there would be different levels of anxiety. But I guess what I want to emphasise is that I think that there is, when we think about and when we talk about it, providing or increasing employment opportunities, we really need to be thinking about it from a different lens. There are some places that feel okay. They're going to get through this. One partner's got stable employment. Both partners have stable employment. They might be going through a tough time. Some of the measures that have been put in place at the national level will assist in getting those families through. But in other areas, there are absolutely already vulnerabilities that are amplified by COVID. So what I mean is that when we look at increasing employment opportunities for people who are already experiencing vulnerability, we can't just increase the availability of jobs. It's all about providing wraparound support and service to enable people to move, particularly people who have been employed sort of medium to long term, to enable and support people to move into employment. And that's certainly one of the areas that's been a gap in Western Sydney, in that, for example, there might be some new programs put in place, a 6-week program to put young people through to then be job ready. But the models that we know work is, you need to make sure people have secure housing. You need to make sure that they have mental health support. So there are some fundamentals before you can put someone through a job readiness 6-week program and expect that to result into sort of secure long-term employment.
So many issues to unpack there, Billie. If we had an extra half an hour, we'd love to be able to pick your brain on all of those. Just in closing today, I'd like to end these sort of sessions with a more of a personal take on how things have gone over the past 6 months and how you've coped, some of the positives or some of the change that you've had personally. What are some of the things that you'd like to share with the audience today about your COVID experience?
Yes, well, my COVID experience, oh goodness, it's been, unfortunate. I feel right from the outset, this sense of feeling so grateful that I had a secure job. And so grateful that my family had a secure job. And I mean, just those fundamentals. So grateful that I have a home, and I have, I didn't have to worry about those fundamentals. We had somewhere to sleep. We could pay our bills, and we could pay our, we had a job, and a job that was secure. So I think for me, one of the I've never really feared for those things. I've never feared for having a home or being able to pay my bills. And for the first time, I suppose, being such a global pandemic, it made me feel grateful for what I took for granted. So that's been an interesting experience, really enlightening, I guess, experience in some ways. I think the other thing too is that we are remote working and, contributing to the effort nationally to keep people off public transport and so on. And I live in southwest Sydney. I'm a Western Sydney girl in Camden, as you mentioned, and I have such terrible access to be able to work digitally. It's just been an ongoing problem, and
one of the more affluent areas of southwest Sydney too, I should add.
100%, I mean, there's good services in some areas. There's, some good services, and so that really, I was like, wow, I'm usually in Parramatta in the CBD doing my work, and all of a sudden I've had to battle that. And I think the third thing that I would like to mention, and these relate to the Western Sydney experience, is that not having to spend an hour and a half driving to work and an hour and a half driving back from work, I thought was going to be fantastic. And I sort of forgot what it was like. And I've been going back into the office a couple of days a week, and I'm spending 3 hours again on the road. And it's really reminded me of how you take for granted that it's just, if you live in southwestern Sydney, I can speak from a southwestern Sydney perspective, your commute is 3 hours a day, and you get to the point where you get used to it and you just take it, you think that's okay, and it reminds you that it's not okay, and that with the equity in terms of access to fundamental things like transport in Western Sydney is a massive issue. So they're my personal takes.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Billie. Fantastic talking as always. Congratulations again on all the work that Community Forum is doing. Look forward to seeing more Zest Awards coming through the inbox in the next couple of weeks. Thanks again, Billie.
Thanks, Adam. Talk soon.
See ya.